Hey everybody, been gone for a while, but I'm back and I'm ready to talk about the things that are happening in the world that I feel are relevant. And boy, do I have a doozy today. Now, my last video was about the Department of Government Efficiency and how the person leading it didn't seem to know anything about the government or efficiency. And you know what's funny about that? I'm not trying to toot my own horn or be arrogant, but I do know about the government and efficiency. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the top five things that I feel the government could do that would improve it in a way that everyone would notice and would definitely benefit the social order, the greater good. Now, first things first, not all of these are my ideas. Some of them are augmented, some of them are originally my ideas, but these are just ideas that I'm saying I feel would make the government function a lot better and would put a lot of people's minds at ease. And speaking of putting people's minds at ease, it's important to know one thing that at the last measured value, the 25% of our nation is underbanked or unbanked. And so that leads me to my first thing. I wonder how many people remember or know that the United States Postal Service used to provide basic banking services. And since there are a lot of people who are unbanked or underbanked or live in rural areas or don't have access to traditional banking services, having that accessible by the United States Postal Service, which you already use anyway in order to get snail mail, it just seems like a logical thing to bring that back. And it seems like a logical thing to just make it so that it's even more accessible because of the internet. I mean, that's definitely something that could change a lot of people's lives. And like I'm saying, this is one way the government could change something that would make it function a lot better. I mean, I remember a lot of conservatives talking about how they want the post office to make money. Well, this is one way in which that could happen. You know, because if the USPS offered loans and people had to pay them back with interest, well, there you go. And you might say this puts the government in direct competition with private banking, but don't forget, the government already subsidizes private banking through the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which basically makes it so that if anything cataclysmic happens, your money is okay up to $100,000. So why don't they just let post offices do what bank services do, just in a basic way? Especially because they, like I said, already used to do that. And if we're talking about banking services, that segues into the next thing I think would improve government function. I don't know if this is true. I don't know if this is something that I can look up. I tried to find something about it, but I couldn't find much. So I do feel like I could say that if it doesn't exist, there probably should be a department in the Internal Revenue Service whose only designated function is to determine how many taxes are being collected by the government and determine where they're going and make that stuff public knowledge. So many people ask that question even now. Where are my tax dollars going? Well, I think it would make a lot of sense if there was a department in the government that helped you answer that question. And why not the IRS? It seems that that's what they do. And if we're talking about getting extra people to help with this, that just sounds like more jobs to me. And if we're talking about jobs and we're talking about representation, I know that's a bit of a stretch, but we're moving on to the next one, which is one that I think genuinely will work and hasn't really been tried. But there's a big issue with gerrymandering when it comes to governance. The winners get the spoils. But I propose if gerrymandering is really that much of an issue, then why not set up a nonpartisan council that designs congressional districts, maybe fed from the judiciary, federal courts? People who have basically no dog in the race making our congressional districts instead of the gerrymandering principle, which creates imbalances in governing. I honestly can't believe this thing hasn't been at least thought about before, but from what I understand, it hasn't been. And right now, it stands to reason to propose this idea because it seems like the only people who are truly safeguarding liberty are judges. So I say, let some of them design the districts. Maybe they're onto something. And when it comes to being onto something, that also goes into the next thing I'm talking about, which is localized police departments seem to struggle with sharing internal data about their operations. And I can understand why they would feel that way. Police officers do really dirty, grimy work that most of the public just simply doesn't understand. But this is what I propose. To make it easier on everybody in a certain aspect, you could have the Department of Defense provide oversight for local police departments and adjudicate cases that require internal investigation, such as police brutality or abuse of power. And I say this because the Department of Defense is already, lined up to do something like this. I mean, just to put this out there, there is a Federal Bureau of Investigation, and this kind of thing seems right up their alley. It makes the most sense to have them be a direct oversight committee to local police departments, adjudicate these cases, and find ways to improve local law enforcement. And you can enlist people who have meritorious backgrounds or people who are, high ranking and have gotten there due to their merit to overlook these things. I mean, I'm basically talking about a federal internal affairs division, but again, I'm wondering why nobody thought of this. And the last one, and this to me is really the most important one, and I mean that, but just to put this in perspective, you need a license to fish, you need a license to hunt, you need a license to drive. In fact, you need a marriage license to confirm a union. So I have wondered for many years why we don't provide some kind of certification or licensing for lawmakers, aka people in legislatures and governance. I mean, if there was a test they could take to get a certification or a seminar or a class where they could get a licensing for knowing how the government works, that would be spectacular. It would definitely put more faith in the aggregate when it comes to voting, and it would definitely ensure that the people who are getting voted in know how to govern us. And for the most part, this isn't really a huge problem, but the thing is, there are a lot of randos in government that just don't know how it works and they're screwing up the whole process. I feel like vetting them wouldn't be beyond the pale, and from what I understand, it definitely doesn't violate anything in the Constitution directly. And if there needs to be legislation to put something like that through, I say go for it because it would do nothing but good for the American people. And if you truly want to elect people based on merit, you would try something like that. Look, at the end of the day, all I know is that the government can function better. And most people agree with that no matter what side of the aisle they sit on. And these are some of my recommendations. And you may think, what's the point? What's the point of this person's recommendations or your own recommendations? Well, we have voices that we can speak directly to power with. And we should do that. And we should suggest these things. Because even if they take credit for it, at least they're doing something explicitly positive for the American people, which is something I feel the current administration and the government in general should really, really lean into. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. I greatly appreciate it. Again, I apologize for the small hiatus. I was just getting things together. But again, subscribe to the channel. Go ahead and leave a conversation in the comments. Leave a comment. This channel is all about conversations. And remember that fear, without the presence of danger, is totally illegitimate. Only be afraid of fear itself. Thank you very much. Take care of yourself.